Hey guys, tell me a place which you wouldn't want to live in, and you'd probably say London, the South Side, also known as Little Lagos, coming from the city of Lagos, which is in Nigeria. Welcome to Nigeria. Economy stagnant, corruption rampant, and blackouts always a guarantee. Damn, must be depressing to live in this country. But let's look at Nigeria. It's a country nestled at the armpit of Africa. Nigeria has a population of about 220 million people, and it's expected to grow by more than 150 million people by 2050. Nigeria is a young with a median age of about 16. So how do they make their money? It's literally just raw resources, and then they import everything else. Like, come on, they even import their own oil. I remember that, it'll be important. And with a GDP of about $470 billion, that's quite impressive. Oh, but how the heck did this happen? Well, we'll have to take a trip through history, so buckle up. So let's go way back. Nigeria has never been a united nation, being divided between multiple ethnic groups, with kingdoms and caliphates falling again and again and again. There were three main ethnic groups, the Hausa, Igbo, and Yoruba. Keep that in mind, it'll be important. Nigeria was one of the center points for the slave trade. But many countries abolishing slavery led to a decline of business, but many products brought interest to many traders, mainly palm oil and cocoa. The British came in establishing the Royal Niger Company in modern-day Lagos in 1886 to protect its interests in the region and take advantage of the regional turmoil. And a couple years before that was the Berlin Conference, and Britain was awarded the modern-day territory of Nigeria, you know, without the notice of the locals. The British in Nigeria used the classic divide and conquer method. How do we draw these borders without the regards of the locals? Straight line? Straight line. Borno. Learn how to read, you immature imbecile. Okay, that's enough. By the way, this is foreshadowing for a future video. I don't know when. Don't quote me on that. The British used to control Nigeria from within. Britain brought Western development, economics, and government. And that spawned a lot of nationalism in the Nigerian populace. Wanting self-determination, Nigeria was managed under two governments, which gave autonomous federalism to the north and south. Psst, there's also a third. Further deepening the divide between the Christian south and the Muslim north. What's that I hear? It's the decolonization train. Hop on. Okay. Nigeria gained its independence as a federal republic, but calling it a republic would be a massive understatement. The corruption was crippling, the funds for having an election were stolen, the election had a voter turnout of about 8%. Jeez, I know I'm corrupt, but chill down. You already had a video, Venezuela. But it's not. The election led to about 2,000 deaths, and in the midst of the chaos, Nigeria experienced a coup after a failed one, and Johnson Aguiyi Ironsi rose to power. But his rule would be short-lived, cause he would be killed during a counter-coup, where he would be killed. Now, there's a new guy in power, and this will be really important. Now, Johnson was an Igbo, and Yakubu Gowon, the new guy, is a Christian from the Middle Belt. Now, remember when I told you about the ethnic divisions? Well, Nigeria's military at this time was mainly formed by northern Muslim soldiers and Igbo soldiers from the south, and that started a deadly civil war, the Biafra War. One thing I forgot to mention, after the counter-coup, the government made Nigeria a unitary state, banned political parties, and started a process of northernization of the economy, causing a lot of rioting, with the increased tension in the country causing disruption between the government, regions, and ethnic groups, with the government drawing new provinces, giving the Igbo majority city of Port Harcourt to the Midwest region, which was basically Benin. Modern-day Benin and the Kingdom of Benin have no correlation with each other, by the way. The most important thing was there were oil reserves. No, Shell, it's not your part yet. This was considered a violation of the agreement that leaders in the East agreed on with the central government. Now keep in mind, most African countries are artificially created. DRC over there, Cameroon over there, tiny Equatorial Guinea with its small autocratic oligarchic leadership ruling the country since near independence. And this includes Nigeria, which at this time had a population of 60 million and over 250 different ethnic groups. Remember the ethnic divisions I told you earlier in the video about? The Igbos are a federal society who are run by democratically elected organized villages. The Hausa and Fulani, who are predominantly Muslim, are ruled by emirs, and these types of governances were perpetuated by British colonial administration. And with Nigeria being independent, it's like mixing oil, milk, and water. But think of the glass as a country. But not everything was doom and gloom though. The South had a good literacy rate for the time, but the North?
We don't talk about the North. It was 2%.
The oil found in the Niger Delta tempted the southeast region to annex it to become economically self-sufficient, but the domination of the military government didn't allow this to happen and excluded Igbos from government, with the North wanting to pull oil to its region to benefit its economy. With tensions rising from election fraud to massacres, the military governor of what would become Biafra declared secession from Nigeria. The Nigerian government launched police action to retake the region by sending divisions to North Biafra, going towards the town of Garkum, which would be captured in 2 weeks. That's a fortnight. But there was one little inconvenience. The western flank, eastern flank, was left undefended and Biafran forces just walked right through, almost capturing the capital Lagos before being stopped at the town of Or. Biafra set up the puppet state of Benin, though it would be retaken 3 months later. With conscription nationwide, Nigeria retook everything west of the Niger River, trying to cross the river, which cost the Nigerian military thousands of casualties and equipment. But October the same year, Nigerian forces managed to cross over to the city of Onitsha, causing 5,000 soldiers to be wounded, killed, or missing. The Nigerian military would reorganize and start a blockade of Biafra by land, sea, and air, and started changing the tide of the war, and quickly recapturing Biafran cities one by one. Bani, Okrika, Port Harcourt, Calabar, and at the late stages in the north, Suka, Ogoja, Abakaliki, and finally capturing the Biafran capital of Enugu. During this war, there was a genocide. With Nigeria's blockade, there was a mass starvation and a humanitarian crisis. Over 2 million people died during the war, which was around only 30 months long. Though many scholars debate if it was Nigeria's blockade or at a lesser extent, the tropical diseases ravaging the area at the time, international organizations started giving Biafra aid, which longer prolonged the war. And a couple months later, the rising sun of Biafra would fall on January 11th, 1970. Nigeria's economy was devastated and reputation around the world tarnished. With 2 million people dead, possibly 3 million, Nigeria's newly found oil a couple years earlier helped with reconstruction. However, the Niger Delta felt like it wasn't being fairly paid for its oil, and a military government would continue to rule Nigeria until 1999. But the oil, where was Nigeria getting its money from? Well, Shell. Shell had been extracting oil in Nigeria before independence and had been the main source of income for the government and still are. In 1979, Nigeria had a second republic, which fell short of its goals and became a government by the rich, for the rich, in the name of the people. With the fact that Nigeria's agricultural sector collapsed, going from 60% of its exports to 10% of its export earnings, with its currency having a high exchange rate, making it cheaper to import food than buy domestic products. Nigeria made the Nigerian National Oil Company. It didn't actually produce any petroleum. That was Shell and Chevron's job. But it was responsible for collecting taxes. Corruption massively increased and Nigeria had a net capital of $1,000, and oil revenue dropped from $25 billion to $10 billion in the span of 3 years. But this has always been Nigeria's economic history. One year it's 200 billion, the next year it's 59, 60 billion, then 160 billion, and then a random recession and stagnation. But with this new wealth, Nigeria consumed and not invest their earnings, and Nigeria's foreign debts started to soar, and half of Nigeria's revenue went to servicing foreign debts, and most of the revenue came from oil companies, which was over 50%, practically keeping the government afloat, giving them unhinged control, bribing politicians, and with OPEC artificially hiking up oil prices, the government was loaded while the people remained impoverished. Meanwhile, rich Shell was stuffing the pockets of officials. But wait, people are protesting against you taking advantage of their oil, contaminating their environment, and taking all the profits? No way. This is unacceptable. But you can't just beat these protesters up, can you? No. This would completely tarnish your world image. So who do you call up? Your right-hand man, the Nigerian military, of course. You practically have them in your back pocket and send them to crush these dissenters, massacring civilians, atrocities. Meanwhile, you don't have to lay a single finger. You help Nigeria build a new capital, general and oil extraction infrastructure. Now that you're in control of Nigeria's oil, you have control over the economy, making you the Nigerian government's daddy. Pause. Just before the new millennium, during 1999, Nigeria became a democracy, with a federal government, with the shell-built capital of Abuja in the center, and doing anything in your power to keep that oil going and strangling the country into your hands. And with the Nigerian currency, the Naira, falling day by day, corruption at an all-time high, potential election rigging, and with a third of Nigerians paying bribes to officials every month, and the cracks of Shell's monopoly on Nigeria are starting to crumble, with being trialed for bribing the government $1.3 billion to cover up ecocide, and losing a case to the Bodo community of the Niger Delta, and the region may actually recover and bounce back for the time being. Maybe. But January 16th of 2024, Shell sold its Nigerian subsidiary after a century of involvement. But the future, we can only tell.